Hey guys, it's Ryan's Torso coming at you from Ryan's Kitchen. This is my brand new series where I take a Western dish and fuse it with an Asian dish. I call it Far East Fusion. It's about good food, about being creative, and about learning to cook. I'm not a professional cook, I'm not even a great cook, but I've traveled the world and studied food. I'm starting to feel comfortable putting together techniques, ingredients, and flavors that I learned about over the years to create something original. This is not a recipe, this is creativity. I've never made this dish before, it might fail, but hopefully we'll be able to learn from it. Today I'm making what I'm calling Dan Biang Lasagna. It's a combination of three dishes, Dan noodles, Biang Biang noodles, and lasagna. I've got my ingredients here. I'm going to stretch my noodles fresh, so let's get started on that right away. We start off with 400 grams of all-purpose flour. I'll add a teaspoon, this is a tablespoon, a teaspoon of salt, which will help it to bind together. Make a little well and slowly add 200 milliliters of water, mixing it as you go. Biang Biang noodles come from Shaanxi province in central China. The name comes from the sound you make when you stretch the noodles, which you'll see and hear later. But the word Biang is famous in China because it's considered the most complicated Chinese character. That apparently means Biang. When you've got all the water into it, you can take the dough out of the bowl and knead it for a few minutes. It's feeling a touch dry, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more water. If you find that it's too wet, you'll want to add more flour. I'm using a recipe for Biang Biang noodles that I got from Chinese Cooking Demystified, a great channel on YouTube that shows you how to make authentic Chinese food. You can find a link to their channel in the description. Okay, that feels pretty good, so I'm going to cover it and let it rest for 30 minutes. So we're going to start making the meat mix for our lasagna, which is a take on the meat that you'd find in Dan mian or Dan noodles. This is a Sichuan dish, so of course we're going to include some Sichuan peppercorn, about 2 tablespoons worth. I'm going to throw them in a dry frying pan to toast them, being careful not to burn them. Now I'll throw them in my mortar and crush them with my pestle until they're a nice powder. Alright, I got a hot pan that I'll hit with some neutral tasting oil. I'd love to be making this in a wok, but my burners are induction and I haven't been able to find a wok that works on them yet. I'm going to use both pork and beef. Dan noodles are usually just ground pork, but I like the combo. I'll brown this, but I don't want to take it too far because it will cook more in the oven. Dan noodles combine a ground pork that's stewed in a sort of sauce, which comes on top of noodles, but there's also another sauce that's not cooked. It's a spicy sour sauce that's hiding under the noodles. You mix it all up and eat it. These two sauces actually have similar ingredients, so to capture the flavors of the dish, I'm going to essentially combine the two sauces and stew the pork in it. I'm also going to add some canned tomatoes, which I'm a little bit worried about it overpowering the rest of the flavors, but I think it'll be fine. This chili oil I made, it's another must-have Sichuan ingredient. Along with the Sichuan peppercorns that I ground up, those are the flavors of Sichuan. In Chinese, they call it mala, which means numbing spicy. The peppercorns make your mouth literally vibrate, and the chili oil is very, very spicy. This recipe is an adaptation of the recipe for Dan noodles that's in Fuchsia Dunlop's book, Land of Plenty. You should pick up this book if you want to cook any Sichuan food. I'll include a link in the description. When that meat is browned, you can add about 3 tablespoons of shashing wine, a must-have in the pantry if you are cooking Chinese food. It's a fermented rice wine. Instead of salt, we're using some soy sauce. I'm going to put in 5 tablespoons of this. Next up, the chili oil. I made this myself, but you can probably buy pre-made stuff in your local Asian grocery store. I'm going to use just 3 teaspoons, but mine is very spicy, so you might need more. Let's put in a couple splashes of dark Chinese vinegar. In China, you'll find dark vinegar on tables in noodle restaurants more than you'll find soy sauce. I'm going to add half the Sichuan peppercorns that I ground up. We'll save the other half for the end. That's really nice, but I'm going to add an extra teaspoon of chili oil. Okay, now for the non-Chinese ingredient, a can of stewed tomatoes. I'll break these up a bit and turn the stove down so we get a nice simmer going. It's looking good. Check this out. I'll let this simmer for maybe a half hour, but I don't want to cook this down too much because we'll need plenty of liquid so it can be absorbed by the sheets of noodles when it's all assembled and baking in the oven. My noodle dough has been resting for 30 minutes. It's puffed up and it's feeling good. I'm going to knead it for a couple of minutes. I want it to be as smooth as possible, so I'll take the sides with seams and I'll drag it across the counter to seal it up. I hate working with dough. It's not great, but I think it'll be fine. Now I'm going to roll it out so it's a log, and we'll cut it into 8 equal-ish size pieces. For each piece, I want to seal up the cut ends, so I'll pinch it and I'll roll it out into a little tube that's about 25 centimeters long. Okay, back in the bowl, cover them with a bit of oil, and we'll let them sit for another 2 full hours. I know it's a long time, but it's going to make the dough really stretchy. When liquid meets flour, gluten proteins start unraveling from the flour and hooking to one another. The longer you wait, the greater the network of interconnected gluten strings there are, which allows the dough to hold together as you stretch it. Let's check on our meat. It's looking really good. Dan Dan noodles are known for combining spicy, sour, salty, and sweet. And I'm not really getting much sweet, so I'm going to add a little bit of sugar, a few teaspoons. That's improved, and it's only going to get better as it cooks more. Time to assemble our cheese mix. I wrestled with the idea of putting cheese in this because Chinese food never really contains cheese, but I decided on a ricotta mixed with a few Chinese flavors. This is yatsai. You might have trouble finding this outside of Asia. I brought it from China, but I have seen it outside of the country. It's fermented mustard green. I like to call it the Parmesan of China. It's very salty and has a lot of umami. I'll crack a couple eggs into a bowl and mix it with some yatsai. I'm not really sure how much to put in. This is maybe 4 tablespoons. I'm also going to include some chopped green onions, and finally the ricotta. Look how beautiful this is. I'll mix it up and then cover it and put it in the fridge for later. So 2 hours later, this dough is ready to be bianged. Oh, let's preheat the oven to 190 Celsius or 375 Fahrenheit. Okay, so as soon as I pull these noodles, I want to put them in the lasagna. So I'm going to make sure everything is ready, and I'm going to start layering now. First, the meat sauce covers the entire bottom of the pan. Then a layer of noodle. Take one of your tubes and flatten it with a rolling pin. Normally you take a chopstick and indent a line down the middle so you can split it after you stretched it, but for lasagna we don't really need to split it. So just take it and stretch it a bit, holding it lightly at either end. Carefully pull as you make an up and down motion. As it gets longer, start slapping it on the table. That sound is called biang in Chinese. It's an onomatopoeia. So I've got this big long strip of dough. I'll cut it to fit the pan, stretching it more when I need to, and repeat until I've made a single layer. Next is the cheese. A nice layer of ricotta there. And we start over with the meat, then more noodles, more cheese, more meat, more noodles, and the rest of the sauce. I'm going to cover it in sliced tomatoes, partially because it'll taste good, but also because it looks sharp. Time to bake. We'll cover it in foil and I'll throw it in the oven for 30 minutes. That was a quick 30 minutes, but we'll need another 30 or so without the foil. And there it is. It looks really good, but we're not quite finished yet. I'll let this cool first for 10 minutes. Traditional Biang Biang noodles come dressed in a combo of ginger, garlic, green onions, chili flakes, and Sichuan peppercorn. That's the basic version. You'll find them with pork or beef as well, but the original is just noodles, oil, and these flavors. You put the raw ingredients on the noodles and then pour hot oil on top to scorch it and bring out the flavors. It's called yo po, which literally means oil splash. So I'm going to do that on this lasagna. I've got some ginger, garlic, green onions, chili flakes, and the rest of the Sichuan peppercorn. Heat up some oil on the stove, and as soon as it starts smoking, let's go to the live audio for this one. The smells right now are incredible, and thankfully it's ready to be eaten. Hopefully this stays together. Look at that, a beautiful piece of lasagna. I'm pretty happy with this. You can see the individual layers. It seems moist enough, but how does it taste? Yes, that is really good. I'm getting the Sichuan peppercorn. I think it could have used a bit more spice. The noodles worked really well though. They might be a bit thicker than normal lasagna noodles, but they're really soft and fluffy. Oh, look who comes running. Let's assess. I think next time I would add more chili oil and maybe a bit more vinegar to the meat. Maybe even make the Dan Dan noodle sauce and just pour it on after. But overall, I'd say this was a success. It tastes great, it looks good. I created something and I enjoyed doing it. So thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe because I'll be making another Far East fusion soon. I've got lots of ideas and I am excited to create more.